Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to... What are you laughing at? And welcome to episode 10.
He doesn't trust me. He keeps staring at me. I'm going to sit on my hands.
For sake.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 10 of the Tables, Lads and Chairs podcast.
Episode X.
Episode X, we made it, Roman numerals X.
Indeed.
Woohoo! I'm one of your hosts, Ray Hewson, with no nickname, I might add.
21st century spit tray man.
Still don't understand it. I heard the song and it still doesn't really make sense.
You are not in the
King
court.
Crimson.
You are not in the court of the Crimson King at all.
Oh, that's the one song I know as well.
The wrong one.
I'm joined by the resident wallflower and maritime expert, Steff Hughes.
Hey, how's it going?
And of course, the incomparable, lovable and adorable
Tree Maker.
Danny the Tree Crane.
Hello there.
How are you all doing, gents?
You sound like Eeyore today.
What's suicidal?
How are you all doing today?
I'm alright.
I'm good.
Yeah?
I've had a long day.
Oh, yes. So, this week's news. So this week, today even, in fact, on the day of recording,
Minutes ago.
Tuesday, Willem
It
Dafoe
will
has
not
been
be
cast in the
topical.
Justice League film, so that's another Sam Raimi Spider-Man alumni that's involved in the production now. J.K. Simmons.
Ah, yeah. I want pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. It's star power. I mean, they've already got Jeremy Irons in, who has some real acting credentials as well. So I think, yeah, adding Willem Dafoe is a really good thing. Are we going to start seeing more people who are sort of bigger in the 90s coming in?
I feel like they're kind of doing what Marvel does a lot, but hopefully they'll do it a bit better, is where they get very respected actors in smaller supporting roles. And when Marvel do it with villains, it doesn't tend to work. They get really talented actors, and it's just, it doesn't work as well, but with Dafoe, like, he'd be a really good kind of sideline character, kind of like how Michael Douglas was in Ant-Man. Like,
He's really good in that, man.
all he ever does is, like, give pretty much exposition, but because it's Michael Douglas, it works really well. Like, if that character was just played by just a kind of generic, alright actor, like, that would have just fallen flat.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited by Martin Freeman being in the Captain America one, the new Civil War.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that there's a possibility of him and Benedict Cumberbatch being on screen at the same time in a role other than Sherlock.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even that big a fan of Sherlock, but I'd enjoy the idea of seeing that.
Yeah, that's
But
just kind of reunited aspect.
And they might even just do like a little nod to it, almost a cheeky little breaking the fourth wall thing, but who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
Speculation entirely. You right, Steph?
Sometimes, yeah. I have no interest in this film still.
Any top films of Willem Dafoe? Any ones you like?
Have you ever seen Antichrist? That's quite sick.
Antichrist.
Antichrist, yeah.
No, I mean, Boondock Saints is what comes to mind for me. He was in that with a few other people, including Norman Reedus, which is quite cool.
Platoon's awesome.
Oh, yeah, Platoon. And my favourite is, I think, Shadow of the Vampire, because it's just so hammy and ridiculous. Because it is about the really strange production of Nosferatu. Him just hamming it up as Count Orlok, just like, with the ridiculous postures and faces.
The shadows.
He has such a creepy face.
Yeah, he does.
Such a good face for acting. He's awesome, and that's why I think they didn't even need to adapt the Goblin Mask very much. It was just like a caricature of his own actual face.
Such an ugly man, it's awesome.
I'm gonna kill you, nice and slow.
He's supposed to have a massive as well.
Come on, does it look like his face, though?
I don't
It's
know.
all veiny like him as well.
Do you reckon it's got its weird teeth as well?
Or like Alien with its mouth. Like the second like pencil thing that comes out.
That's just horrifying.
Highbrow humour again on the TLC podcast.
What type of role do you reckon he's going to play, hero or villain?
Who now, Defoe?
Defoe.
I'd like to see him
Is he
in
gonna
something
be-
other than a villain because he will be typecast.
Yeah, I
The
feel like...
question is,
Is he going to be a friend or Defoe?
we crowbarred that into you.
7 years too late, but it's there.
Well done, Steph.
Thank you.
Project.
He's projecting right now, but you can't see it because it's light and not sound.
True. He's projecting light. My God.
I can reflect with my glasses. I suppose I could do that.
What are you,
Sort of like
Cyclops?
MacGyver.
Look at me, Shay.
Joining me in the perverted X-Men.
Oh dear.
That could be its own
Scott
couldn't
Sellers.
it? The X-rated mansion.
The X-rated mansion.
Oh, mate. Do you reckon that's what Professor X uses Cerebra for when he's like...
Cerebra.
Cerebra.
Yes, he joins that brain charity.
But, like, you can imagine that, like, VR porn, isn't it, for him?
Yeah.
It's just, oh, yeah, oh.
Yeah, he's just staring
I've never felt power like this before.
Stop!
Yeah, so that's news. And speaking of news, the fax machine. Oh my God, it's going.
It's off again. The dust is unsettling.
Right,
So this week in the news, anyway, Tom Cruise apologised, I suppose we could say.
do you mean Johnny Depp?
What did I say? Tom Cruise?
Yes,
I said
you
Tom
did.
Cruise. How did that happen?
The other suspiciously short man.
The ageless, suspiciously short man.
Good shout, Danny. Good shout. You're absolutely right.
He's almost 60 now, isn't he, Tom Cruise? It's quite bizarre. Think of that. Tom Cruise
He's
is
not
almost
almost
60.
60s. He's surely, I mean, he's 50, isn't it?
I think
51?
I think he's probably 53, maybe.
No way.
Well, the power of the internet compels us.
The man's in better shape than all of us. That's the important thing.
I got better teeth.
Yeah, but can you
I've got
stand
a
on
better
a
nose.
can you stand on a box better than him? He is 53.
I was
Oh,
correct.
yeah.
Spot
I
on.
thought he was much older than that.
On the nose there by Danny Craine.
On Ray's big Jew nose.
So what was this apology about, Steff?
So Johnny Depp apologised.
Sorry, that's what you said earlier. Like,
Just sunk in.
Did you say, did you know? Wow. So, yeah, anyway, Johnny Depp and his wife, partner thing,
Amber Heard.
Amber Heard.
What did she hear?
She heard the brute force of the Australian authority.
Anyway, back to the news.
Yeah. So anyway, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard apologised. They didn't really apologise, did they?
I don't know. They looked like they were being held at gunpoint.
it was deposition level. I mean, it was a camera on the table whilst they're doing this deposition. It was really awkward.
It was amazing. It was the most heartfelt thing I've ever seen Johnny Depp do, I reckon.
So it's all about these dogs being smuggled into the country when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
it Terriergate or something ridiculous
Terriergate.
like that?
That's ridiculous. So basically, when Johnny Depp was filming Pirates of the Caribbean a few months ago, Amber Heard decided that she was just going to bring her dogs over to Australia.
As you
And-
do.
As you do, and just bypass all the economic laws they have out there.
They get really funny about that out there. It's like immigration.
I can understand.
Yeah.
Immigration on all
Immigration.
levels,
But
absolutely.
it's because the ecosystem in Australia is so high that when you bring out like an outsider creature
Yeah.
in, I don't know, the
Like
woods,
white people.
Yeah, because I can just imagine the terrier
Non-criminals.
being released into the wild and dominating the species. Just-
It's not as if
Oh, yeah.
Australia's not one of the most dangerous countries in the world as far as wildlife
in
concerned.
fact, the laws are probably there to protect animals coming in.
Domestic terrier versus killaroo. But yeah, no, this video was amazing. It was just Johnny Depp and Amanda Heard just staring at the camera, being the most sincere. Like,
Do you think it was earnest?
It was. They were there. Basically their agent told them to apologize, and they did it in the most amazing way ever by literally just reading off a script that someone else had written them.
And Johnny Depp followed suit in always looking like an action man, the way he's dressed. Like, his clothes are always a little bit too big. Like, his collar is really big. Like, he doesn't fit in his suit properly. It's quite funny.
And Helena Bonham Carter wasn't in it.
Which is probably one of the best things he's done in a long, long time. You know, I'm sold.
Tim Burton was like, "Oh, Johnny, I heard you did a shoot recently. Can I,
Can I get in on that?
please help?"
Right.
So, any more news?
Oh yeah, cool. One guess to guess how much it would cost to build your own life, like Darth Vader suit,
I have in the
A
past.
functioning one.
functioning Darth Vader suit.
Bin
So does it-
bags, a few LED lights.
Does it actually have real breathing apparatus?
Real breathing apparatus,
And a lightsaber?
prosthetics without the lightsaber, and a voice box.
And a voice box? Probably not that much. I reckon I could...
James Earl Jones voice box attached.
Yeah, you have to carry James Earl Jones on your back at all times.
He's a big man.
He is a big man. He's what, like 6'2", 6'3", probably,
I was thinking more bulky-wise.
and heavy set.
Yes, heavy set is the best way to describe him. So, Darth Vader's suit, I'm going to put it in the millions, definitely. I mean, 4 or 5 million at least, because you've got some like really thick material, really strong material that would have to be used there. Because like one single tear, and you've broken that like internal ecosystem that you're meant to have to keep.
Yeah, and just
Right.
obtaining the rights to be able to do it would cost a fortune.
Minus that part, right? You also got to put into consideration, the maintenance, they reckon, of the work as well.
How long is it being maintained for?
Don't ask me questions. It's not what it says.
Carry on.
Okay, so give us a quick lowdown.
So how much? All right, cool. So
I'm going to go 2.5 million.
we got to go for the 2 million, 4 million. Yeah.
Yeah. I said 2.5 just in case it's in between. Just to clarify.
You cheeky.
It's actually a real life like Darth Vader.
Oh
model.
my
It
God.
would cost you $18.3 million.
Dollars, though. So we're
Dollars.
actually not as far away as it sounds.
It's still like
It's still like
No, it's still
10.
14 million
Yeah.
pounds.
Just let me like live in this, okay? I didn't make it as bad as it actually is.
They reckon the base suit itself would cost you about $12 million.
Yeah,
Just
but
for the actual breathing apparatus and everything inside it.
is this sourcing it from like the ethical companies, the really good ones? What if we went bargain basement Darth Vader?
Well, you get Kylo Ren then, won't you?
What if we made it in China? Is
You
this
could-
being
you
made
could-
in America or China? That's
You could cut costs just by the American labour. I mean, come on.
yeah.
The
But you're not
workmanship
going to have
may
a
not
very
be
good
there.
Darth Vader then, are you? You're not going to be well respected.
Probably what you're sitting on and talking through right now was probably made in China.
Darth Vader. It'd be like a
If I was going to make a Darth Vader, it'd be a real Darth Vader. I need to live in my corner.
What, you just
Connor?
burn a
Come
man and put him in a suit?
Cut off his torso.
You'd find a really bad actor and just abuse him.
And
Hayden Christensen, I'm talking about you.
Find an actor and then find another one to talk for him.
I can imagine Steff in a row going, "Yes, feel your hatred."
Good, good. I think we have the next Photoshop.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, any more from you, Van, then, mate?
I think we're good this week.
All right, okay.
Back to you guys in the studio.
Yeah.
So
Alien Resurrection.
So,
La la la, segue direction.
so we recently watched Alien Resurrection.
Together.
As a threesome.
Yeah, it was relevant because it's a French film, so weird happens.
It was. There was weird angles. There was a strange filter over the lens as well.
A light that was always in Winona Ryder's eyes in particular close-ups.
Yeah, the kind of circular light that you tend to get on, like in like rap videos. That like shows
Yeah.
up in their eyes. That like circular
yeah.
light. I mean, you've made it when you're in a video with that lighting. That'll be where we draw the line, guys. That's when we know we made it.
Winona Ryder is not a gangster.
So, Alien Resurrection.
Didn't like it myself. Just saying it.
Well, I'd seen it before and I always knew it was terrible, but I thought I'd give it another go.
I thought I'd seen all of the Alien films, and that one I'm not sure about. No.
It's weird. There's a lot of good elements in it that just don't gel together because they're completely disparate. I mean, you've got a script by Joss Whedon, who is someone I regard as a very good writer, and either he did a terrible script or the studio just f***ed around a lot with it.
Well, I feel like there was a lot of love put into that script by him because he wouldn't let go of the franchise. He put an Alien reference in the first episode of Firefly.
Yeah,
The Wayland Corporation logo on like the UI of one of the computers,
yeah.
So yeah, he probably put a lot into that film, and to see it turn out like that's got to be a bitter taste for you. I mean, just the f***ing creature at the end. What the hell?
Nice saggy tits and weird tongue face thing.
Strange expression. A nose that isn't really a nose. and
Albino Yeti.
Yeah, and when because you see full body shots and you just see how awkward looking it is.
It's on camera way too long.
It's got a really bad posture, like it's gonna get bullied when it's older.
Killed its mum. Can we just talk about how weird that scene though was when he killed his mum but looked at Ripley as if it was all fine?
Yeah, like I
Just
killed my
wouldn't touch
mum,
Ripley.
but grandma.
Yeah,
Like,
it was really bizarre.
And it's just it just cycled through facial expressions. So it either had sad, oh look at it, it's cute, and then it was like utter terror monster face.
But
You'd
it
be
was
like,
ridiculous cute. It was like it looked like the Hogfather, like the death of
Yeah.
the Hogfather. It was really just off, and it took me right out the film and back into whatever else I was doing, like looking at my phone or something.
It reminded me of the Yeti from Monsters Inc.
Oh, the one with the
Yeah.
snake yeah.
Because it was just like it's just a really sympathetic character all of a sudden, and then not again. Then Sully,
Sully, yeah.
Sully,
Scully.
Scully.
Sully and Mulder together.
I get my monsters mixed up.
That's John Goodman, isn't it?
Oh, that'd be a great crossover. X-Files, Monsters, Inc.
All right.
Isn't Sully John Goodman?
I thought you meant X-Files then.
Sorry, what you said, Ellie? Didn't interrupt you there.
Monsters, Inc. X-File crossover.
Yes.
Scully's continuously trying to... No, sorry, Mulder's trying to convince Scully that they exist.
Mulder, no.
Don't go in your closet!
I told you, Mulder, no. I'm going to meet a guy called Mike.
But just...
He only has one eye. But I hear it's really big.
But yeah, just going back to Alien Resurrection, it's just...
Can we not do that ever again?
No, but it's such a French film, like, just to the point where they've slotted so many random French actors in the film. You've got the weird guy that licks the window, who's like breeding the aliens, and then he's given exposition in the end, but really sexual exposition.
And then there's the wheelchair-bound character.
Yeah, who's got the most impractical space wheelchair.
It looks like something up Bob the Builder. It's really out there.
Yeah, and how he's able to sneak his gun attached to the thing, like in a few parts, like, oh, that doesn't look like the barrel of a gun at all. Yeah, with the wheelchair guy again, it seems that they put him in a wheelchair simply because he couldn't deliver convincing English lines. So I was like, he's got to have a disability because he just. It sounds like it really offends, but it's just like it's as if they just didn't know what to do with this guy. Like the director insisted, and I was like, we're just gonna have to feed him lines, and like we're gonna have to put him in a wheelchair.
He just couldn't speak English and walk at the same time.
Maybe it was just. Yeah, it was just his words were just too mangled, and you're like, "What is this man saying?"
Tangent
I
over.
mean, like I said, like you said earlier, Dan, there's some interesting ideas on there, but at the end, it's just
Doesn't mesh.
It's wasted away in some really weird exposition and just extremely terrible shots, and also just retreads a lot of old ground. Like when Winona Ryder does die, I thought she died. Turns out she's alive because she's an android, which is just like Ash and
Bishop.
From the original, well, the original two, and you're like, brilliant. Nothing new here then.
Well, the franchise itself has been withering. In every new thing they put out, it seems to be harming it more and more. The AVP films and Prometheus recently as well. It's almost like you'd want to go back to the first film and recast it in some way.
Yeah.
If only, gentlemen, there was a way we could frame that, a way that we could recast this film today.
Well, I believe we do have a segment like that. We've gone through this before, haven't we not?
A segment of some kind, you say?
It's named after someone who writes theme music.
What's that noise coming?
It's I can hear Lee Shears.
Lee Shears.
Wonder Years.
Wonder Years.
Wonder Years.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have taken Lee Shears' Wonder Years and we've adapted it, much in the way the Xenomorphs adapt throughout the films.
Yes, Lee Shears is now an albino.
So rather than the awkward way we did things before, we're going to compete with each other. We're going to compete with each other for a literal crown.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do it that time.
Oh
we
my
have
God.
a table.
Can you stop kicking the table?
I am the table.
We have a very expensive crown in front of us, which will be given to the winner of the new Lee Shears Wonder Years. So we're going to reframe and repurpose Alien in the modern day.
I'm holding my foot.
And because of
just flicking.
And because of what he's doing, I want the resident wallflower and maritime expert Steff Hughes to go first.
Oh. And when you say first, though, are you going around like people? If I say like, oh, if I had Dallas as this person, are you going to go then?
No, did you give your version? I'll give my version. Ray gives his version.
Yeah, but keep it quick because it's not the main event, you know.
All right, cool. Have we all got the same characters then?
We've all picked up.
I've thinned the herd a bit.
Yeah,
deliberately.
We're focusing on a version, so just do what you want.
Yeah. All right, sound. I've kept pretty much the primarily the main cast. I think in the original film, there's not much. You know, Ripley's not really a main character until about halfway in, or at least 3/4 ways in. And I think if it's going to be made today, there'd probably be a lot more focus on Ripley herself, and she probably wouldn't be as toned or bogged up as anything. She's probably just some space marine out there, just there to make up the numbers, who became this unexpected hero. So I think Natalie Dormer could fit. Natalie Dormer could fit that quite well.
You'd fit Natalie Dormer quite well, wouldn't
I'd
you?
fit. No,
Wait.
She is too tall.
Is she though?
She's 5'6", Steff.
She is too tall.
It's like your height.
Yeah, she's perfect height for you.
But then again, when she's in heels, immediately emasculated.
It has happened before.
That's fine. You don't wear heels in space.
Space heels.
You do. I've seen them. They're big, chunky boots.
Mate, that's the wrong franchise. That's like Fifth Element.
Element,
And because it's more modern, I think we're gonna have probably a captain at the helm, and probably it's gonna be the old traditional cranky captain. So I've gone for Bryan Cranston
Good choice.
because I think he can do cranky Cranston.
He's done cranky ever since Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
He can do cranky. I'm gonna keep the unexpected robot, which is Ash. I reckon, following on from Michael Fassbender, I want Benedict Cumberbatch to be the new Ash.
Carry on.
What?
I don't know. It's just let's just pick a British actor that's in demand.
But I think that's the thing, though, because if you can have a robot, I think in the modern films, I think they're going to be like a well-spoken.
Yeah, I do
kind of
agree with
human
you.
person.
You just kind of, especially in context with what happened with Prometheus, it's going to be something like that. Yeah.
And who's the most well-spoken British man you know? Cumberbatch. Then we obviously got like the other guys that are probably going to die pretty quickly. So we've got Shad Moss as Kane.
Who?
Shad Moss.
Is that a wrestler?
No. But I can't remember what he's in now.
Is that just a surname?
No, Shad Moss is his name, but I can't remember what he's in.
Oh, so it's two separate names.
Shad Moss.
Chad.
You didn't space it. You put it as some sort of spacey name.
And you said it.
Moss.
Is it Chad or Shad?
Shad.
Okay.
C-H-A-D.
Because when you just said Shad Moss, it's like shaft.
You just said C-H-A-D, so Chad.
No, Shad.
S-H.
Is he French?
S-H.
Are you letting the French invade the Alien franchise again?
We saw what happened, Steff. Don't do it again. We're doomed to repeat our failures.
Shad Moss is actually in the Fast and Furious things. He's actually just a background character in a number of them. So
is he an extra in all of the Fast and Furious films?
He's in like 2 or 3 of them, but he's like part of like that family that don't really get a word in.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I reckon
Family.
background character, he's there.
Like Glenn Morshower.
Yeah. And because you need another woman in there for that cast, I've gone for Evangeline Lilly.
Evangeline Lilly.
I can't say it.
She seems a bit of a big actress to be expendable.
Is she?
She's bigger than Natalie Dormer.
In fact, I'd kind of want her to lead more than Dormer.
Really?
I suppose that's a bit shocking, though. If she
pick on it.
No, if she's one of the earlier people to die off in the film, that would be like, whoa, you'd have thought she'd be leading the film, so it could work to their advantage.
Dormer in films, all he's really done is Hunger Games as that camera womany sort of person, the director. It's a very small role, so for her to suddenly take up the lead, you could have the advertising with Evangeline Lilly, I suppose, as the lead.
Yeah, and Natalie Dormer's at least a recognisable enough figure that it's not too much of a cop-out if she does become the main character, I suppose.
I don't even think she's a big actor. I've only really known her for Ant-Man and the Hobbit films. Is she?
She was in Lost for 7 seasons or 6 seasons.
I don't watch Lost.
But it was a fairly big event.
People know her for Lost, do they? Oh, well.
He just blanks everything J.J. Abrams has done after Star Trek Into Darkness.
I think that is. I genuinely think it is.
That's why you're so negative about
I have a
Star Wars.
JJ filter on where I just can't do it.
The anti-flare filter.
And finally, I got the voice of Mother would be just Sigourney Weaver. Just because I like to be awkward.
It's a very good ode to her, I think. It's a nod, you know?
Yeah.
It's a franchise which is not meant to exist in Alicia's universe. Because it's as if it were new. But fair enough.
Boom.
How's it go?
That's irrelevant. What, her voice?
The film.
All right. It basically just follows on the original plot of the original Alien film. A lot more focus originally on Natalie Dormer or Ripley. And it's just, the guys going about their thing. They meet the alien. Alien slowly starts killing people off. And there's a lot more explosions. I wouldn't change it too much, but I think Hollywood would just go, more explosions. More xenomorph. And Ripley would live at the end.
She lives at the end of the original.
There would be a really weird twist. Like she got in
She was the alien the whole time.
Like she got in cryogenically frozen, but the xenomorph did as well.
Okay.
Or held on to the back of her thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Piggybacking a ride off the back.
Pretty much.
Okay, so yeah, that's cool. Who's next? Shall I go?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Drop it.
Okay, yeah. So I've kind of gone with Steff and kind of still kind of sticking to the fairly kind of similar premise of the original film, but I perceive it as more of a kind of found footage film. In the modern day, I feel like because it's the very claustrophobic atmosphere of like a kind of a mining ship in space, that's the type of thing where it would probably happen in modern day cinema, and you could maybe get away with it.
So like Blair Witch, sort of quarantine, that sort of
vibe.
Okay.
And then specifically, I thought a J.J. Abrams produced film.
Oh my god.
It's the type of, I feel like the type of film like he produced, but he likes the idea, but he's too expensive to direct it. So he brings in someone that's much smaller to kind of direct it, but it's marketed as produced by J.J. Abrams. So I thought maybe someone like Neil Marshall, Dog Soldiers, The Descent, a few episodes of Game of Thrones, like the really big battle ones in some of the earlier series. And I thought, like, he's...
Oh, he did the Bay one with the green
Yeah,
fire.
with the wildfire. Because he's the type of person that's very good at kind of doing spectacle on a budget. So I thought, yeah, he's probably the type of person you'd bring in that kind of situation. And I thought, yeah, the reality is the alien would probably end up being a CGI creature, so that's why I haven't cast that at all. So that's something that's literally there for scares. It's probably less of a character in the film. It's less sexual and less phallic. It's literally just there to be. And I kind of perceived it as more of an event film where they get lots of known actors that aren't big, but just for certain roles. So, like, it's a really recognizable cast, but not, like, A-list, but you recognize them all from something. So, yeah, casting it. I was thinking for the Ripley role, I actually had the same idea as Steff and picked Natalie Dormer.
Whoop whoop.
It's like someone's taken, like, 9gag and, like, filtered it into this segment, because Natalie Dormer is beloved on the internet.
Yeah.
You've both gone with her.
Well, I was either her or I was going to pick either her or Emilia Clarke, the other Game of Thrones actress, Daenerys, but she's like 5'2". I was like, I cannot see her taking on an alien. Like, I'm sorry, even though she is Mother of Dragons. Yeah, and then I went for a kind of more defined captain role, so I picked Alan Tudyk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, of Firefly, Serenity fame,
Reference from the show before,
Dodgeball,
yeah.
Dodgeball, all those films. I thought typecasting, yeah, and yeah, he'd probably die off quite quick. He'd like immediately he'd be like the Sam Jackson guy from Deep Blue Sea, gives a rousing speech and probably just gets vent open dead. That type of guy.
You don't even see the death, you just see the blood sort of thing.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
I feel like it probably wouldn't be like your 18s kind of film. It would be kind of probably a 12A, kind of get the biggest audience in. Yeah. So it would be more focused on jumping and loud noises rather than gore and violence. And then android character Ash, Adrian Brody. He can play that kind of creepy, detached person. And he's kind of quite tall enough and gangly enough that, you know, he could be physically imposing at least to Natalie Dormer if, you know, when he freaks out in the film. And then for Kane, I went a bit maybe almost fourth wall breaking. I picked because obviously that's John Hurt, the legendary John Hurt. Sean Bean, just Sean Bean, because you know he's gonna die.
That poor man.
Yeah, and then. As Parker, he's the black guy in the film. He's one of the kind of secondary characters that doesn't really have a massive role in the film. So again, I just picked someone that I thought had a bit of kind of gravitas to him to kind of maybe expand on his character a bit in a modern day setting. I feel like he's the type of character they'd probably give a bit more of a role these days. And I went for, I think it's Digimon Hewson, from the guy from Gladiator and Push, Guardians of the Galaxy. He's the type of character he always ends up in like supporting roles, but he's a very good actor, so he kind of get a lot of respect, and he's kind of on a budget. He'd work well, probably get his own little subplot maybe.
His own agenda.
Yeah. And then for Lambert, the other woman, I just picked Stephanie, I think it's Storstack. It must be like an Eastern European name. It's the really sexy woman from Iron Man 3 that's one of the extremist women. She's missing one of an arm before the extremist process.
Got that scar on her eyebrow.
Yeah, that.
I think that's real, that one.
But yeah, I picked her because I was like, she's hot, and like she's the type of person that's expendable enough to be just in a tiny supporting role.
Kill her in the same way as well.
Yeah, kill her.
Microwave.
Alien does the microwave it. Yeah, and then finally for Brett, the kind of that guy who appears in the Coen Brothers film.
God damn it, boy.
So yeah, for Brett, the guy who appears in the Coen Brothers films, that kind of guy who just appears in anything. He was even in the Avengers as well, just for a brief moment. I picked Jackie Earle Haley, just the kind of grizzled out old guy. He's probably been doing this for longer than anyone else. He doesn't really have a big role, but he's probably the first one to go, but he's just like...
Just to give it context, Watchmen, he plays Rorschach.
Yeah, he plays Rorschach in Watchmen. He's one of the main villains in the new RoboCop, the RoboCop reboot. He's the kind of the military guys, and they're testing him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that film.
Enough about that anyway. But yeah, I still feel like it would be the kind of same concept, kind of your B-movie script with a bit of money thrown at it, but more thrown at the cast rather than the kind of the production values, because you could get away with like cheap scares and a few sets on quite a budget. So it would mainly be focused on the cast and be kind of more perceived as an event film. But yeah, that's my version.
I'm completely down with that. I'm going to go a very different route, okay? Gentlemen, I want you to
Are you going to
picture...
go musical?
No, I'm not. The amalgamation of, let's say, The Hills Have Eyes, Pitch Black, and Are We There Yet Too? Okay?
3 films. Well, 2 of those films have never been mentioned together at all ever.
I've not seen Are We There Yet
It's
Too?
quite possible. So I originally wanted Queen Latifah in the role of Ripley, but I've had some thought about it, and instead
You've come to your senses, have you?
I want Ronda Rousey. Okay, I want this.
What's she gonna do? Armbar the alien?
I don't want it to be one of those ones where you don't know who the main lead is. I want it to be okay. On the front thing, it's going to be this is a female lead. Deal with it, but it's going to have like a comedy quirk to it almost in the way it is. So she's going to be Ripley, Ronda Rousey. Okay, she won't have too much dialogue because she's not that strong on it. Like as an actor, she wasn't very good in Fast and Furious, but she can still handle the action really well.
So is she more like Colonial Marine type character, or?
Yeah, she's definitely an army brat kind of person.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of a chip on her shoulder because the males don't see her in the same way. You can always put that subtext in there. I'm going to have, as Dallas, the captain, Dennis Quaid. He can do captains on a ship very well. He's a strong actor, like through and through. Like I don't care what people say about him. I think he's a good actor all the way. Don't laugh, okay?
I think.
Now my cast is a lot smaller. It's going to be more of a character drama in the way it's done, with a bit of comedy thrown in there. But I'm going to have Kristen Wiig with 2 eyes. You know?
Oh yeah.
She's going to be more of the comic relief.
Not just the one eye. Not a cyclops.
Christian Wiig eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
With no hair and one eye.
Yeah, so you got Ronda Rousey, you got Kristen Wiig. They deliberately have to have different hair colours because you've got to make it more obvious for people because people are stupid. It's true that way.
It's 'cause she's bald.
And then Dennis Quaid is sort of captaining this group, okay? And then you're going to have Andy Serkis in the role of the alien, and the alien's going to have more of a role in terms of acting. Now it's still going to be the same look, same design, and all that, but it's going to be more emotive. Now you're not going to see the full body because that spoils it. But there's going to be more going on there in emotions because he can capture that with the small subtext. Okay, so it's going to be almost a little bit of a satire, okay, in the same way that Jurassic World was. So Dennis Quaid is leading these people. He is leading almost like what's the best way to describe it? Like a tourism thing throughout space.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it's got to the point where traveling through space isn't amazing anymore. People are bored of it. The same way like that guy who works at Jurassic World is like. Enjoy the ride, like that sort of thing. You know, it's going to be a satire that we're always bored of that amazing thing and those amazing places because we've seen them so many times. He's going to be leading these people on this, okay? And Ronda Rousey's probably going to be the security, the muscle with him. And then you've got a lot of supporting actors who no one gives a shit about. I'm going to give some people who don't deserve a role. You know, they can just be in there to build up. Danny, you're staring at my neck. It's really weird.
I'm staring at the V line. It's just so sexy.
So unrevealing.
I know, it's a deep plunge into my chest. So, yeah, it's going to be like intergalactic sightseeing, but it will be playing on that trope of people not being amazed anymore. They'll be bored. Similar to The Hills Have Eyes, where it's like, oh, can we just go home? That sort of thing, you know, with a lot of people. And that's where they get the message from the ship. I can't remember the name of the ship now. If I wrote it down.
They're the Nostromo, but then there's the one they get the message from is space jockey ship. Let's call it that. Yeah,
it's a ship, and that's when they go down to that planet and they discover it. And it goes very much in the same way, but it's going to have that Hills Have Eyes style to it, where they're just like, oh, can we just go home? This is horrifying. There's a lot of brats there. But Ronda Rousey's leading it in the way that Vin Diesel does in Pitch Black, where he's just taking charge.
Oh yeah.
And I think it could be a role that could define her, maybe spawn a few sequels. Who the knows, okay? But that's
like Bill Goldberg in Universal Soldier.
Absolutely not. How dare you make that pairing, okay? But this is going to be, like I said, a bit of a satire in its way, but not shot as found footage. I mean, there'll be, look at the Hills Have Eyes. The way that shot is nothing special. There's lots of shots from quite far away, so almost like the view of what the enemy's seeing, in the same way you could have that with the alien, you know?
Yeah.
The way you could have it sort of slinking through, because you never see its travel. You could have it from its point of view, sort of traveling through vents and stuff.
Oh,
like
it's
that.
almost like in Sam Raimi films when you see like Bruce Campbell running away from just that mysterious thing every time, something like that.
Yeah, you see it chasing and snapping
Yeah.
its heels, but not in some weird blurry vision. The alien sees perfectly fine.
But
It's
more
not
in a
like-
sneaky way. Yeah, I know what you mean. Just
So you can see how it's thinking, and that's where Andy Serkis come into it for when you do see its face, because you want to see how it ticks a bit more.
so it's a CGI creation in this respect.
It's a
then.
CGI creation, but it will be very much the same design. So that's my idea. Ronda Rousey will steal the show, and she'll spawn a few sequels. That's my idea for She's One of Years.
What spawned a few sequels? Is that because she gets impregnated at the end?
Oh.
End credit stinger.
Sorry,
Andy
guys.
Serkis.
That was a long-winded one.
So, gentlemen, what are we thinking? Steph, you go first.
You don't have to hide it anymore.
Steph, what do you reckon?
I don't know. I'll come back to me. I don't know.
I'm actually gonna go with Ray not because it sounds good. It just sounds like it would end up as a cluster, a brilliant cluster.
It's going to be low budget. Like that's an obvious one. They're going to blow their budget on Ronda herself.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those films that will be so terrible that it's just gonna get cult status.
Like The Cube. Same
I
style.
love The Cube.
Exactly, but it's such a bad film. That's the thing.
Yeah, and to be fair, Ray did give the most original idea, so I'm gonna go with Ray. Yeah, I'll give him. What you reckon, Steffi boy?
Yeah, I want to see Ronda Rousey act. I want to see how terrible it would be.
She's not that bad, I will say.
Dennis Quaid giving her pointers.
On camera, giving her pointers.
I like to think she keeps confusing him with Kevin Costner. Like, oh, I saw Waterworld. Like, that wasn't me. Like,
JFK, you saw who killed JFK? Was that you?
you're Superman's dad. Like,
Or just like lines in the film where someone will just like shout, it's like, "Oh, Barrett!" It's like, "Oh yeah!" Just see it drop the alien.
well, my little subjects.
I like to think that she's taking it too seriously. We're like, will you fight the alien? She's like, I'm doing no fighting. I'm a pizza. I'm a lover in this film.
A pizza. I'm a pizza.
I'm a lover in this film.
Do you reckon the alien would be a lot more kind of more like a man in a sense, so she can hate it more?
It's meant to sort of epitomise all of her struggles of the military.
Yeah.
God damn,
So
that's
what
horrible.
you've made here is a real feminist icon film.
It's not, and do you know what? It's
It's going to be one of those
Heavy-handed.
The
Yeah.
reason why it's
one of
gonna-
those accidental masterpieces
It's
that feminism holds up forever and a day.
No, it's going to catch that boom of female strong leads. So it would be released between Star Wars Episode 7 and Rogue One. It would be between those two strong female films.
So next week.
Pretty much next week, Ronda Rousey
Ronda.
in Alien by Ray Hewson.
Alien.
Oh, Raylien.
Raylien.
Oh.
Railing it.
Well, my loyal subjects, I'm taking the crown.
All right, you know, you still got to pick someone even if you win.
I'm picking myself. It's unanimous.
It fits so well with the hair.
It doesn't.
I'm gonna
It's
call
like a
you.
kip on the back of my head right now.
All right, Jewfrey.
Who threw them poops at me?
All right, now that Ray's won the crown, the first winner of Lee Shear's Wonder Years,
In its reimagined sense.
on to the
It's
main
time for the main event.
event.
Main event. Okay, so main event of the evening. We are based on today soundtracks, and specifically soundtracks of films. Steph went cross-eyed for a second there.
Did I?
Yeah,
Oh, shit.
that's really weird. You really threw me
I
off.
feel weirder than normal.
So these are soundtracks that really define films in their own way. Probably made them much, much better for it. You're right, Steph.
Try and do it again.
Don't do it. Oh God.
It's a spontaneous thing. Don't do it.
No.
You just look like you're concentrating
eyesight
too
much
hard.
worse. So what we'll do, listener, we pause between listening to each soundtrack just to sort of get a feel for what it is. You guys won't hear it, but I will put links in the description of the podcast so that you can go listen to it yourself if you want to, or just listen to it on Spotify or something like that yourself if you want. You may already know it.
I'll buy the film.
Or buy the film. Support the filmmakers because they're struggling, clearly. As the current reigning king of the Lee Shears podcast, oh, that didn't work. King of the Lee Shears Wonder Years.
Mate, this is different territory. You can't dictate what happens in a different
oh God,
kingdom.
You're right.
You're the king, but you're not the king of the world.
Sorry, Danny. You are monitoring our levels. I guess you can decide.
Okay, I picked Steph going first because he's not paying attention. Or he's...
I'm going over my
Again.
notes.
That's why he's going first.
I'm going over my notes.
I didn't write notes. I'm just going to improv this.
Yeah, I'm going to have to improv.
Surely you should know the soundtrack well enough.
Yes, I do. Are we listening to the first one?
Yeah, I'll get YouTube up.
They're quite original songs, aren't they?
Can we pause off this? Okay, and we're back.
wow,
So,
sexy
I
voice.
believe our first person is Steff Hughes. What do you have to say, you little filthy minx?
I don't know whether you're doing like late night love or
Well,
just...
you're taking over my job, that's the important thing.
And now Ray Hewson.
Are you Julian Clary?
The who? The
Well,
king
wasn't the
of
king of this universe.
the king of the bling is here to mediate.
You're the prince of the universe, Ray.
You're a visiting dignitary. He's from a backwards land.
Kiss my ring, bitches. Hi, Steph. So, what was your pick? Well, I mean, we know what your pick is, but let the listener know what your pick was.
Of course. So my pick is The Social Network.
Stop tapping your phone.
Can you hear that?
Take it off the table.
You can hear that? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Sound.
I can hear that.
Amazing.
I can
How
hear
do you
that better
think?
than I can hear you, mate.
So my choice for soundtrack is the soundtrack for The Social Network. It's the soundtrack pretty much pretty much 90% of his all original work, all done by Trent Reznor. Trent Reznor.
I'm just trying not to make noise.
That was like.
The fifth best guitarist.
Did it
in the
have to
world.
go up like that far up? David Fincher, director of The Social Network, actually asked Trent Reznor directly to do it himself. And when Trent basically said, if it's not my way, I'm not doing it, David Fincher basically fought for Trent Reznor to do it his own way. And so it becomes really Trent Reznor's first ever independently done thing that isn't Nine Inch Nails. And it takes why did I put my hand right in front of my face? And it becomes this really different kind of... What am I trying to say? It's this soundtrack that basically is for an electronic age. It's all about computers and networking and all that kind of stuff. And it's really representative in the music, so much so that even sometimes you don't really... It just blends so well into what they're actually doing within the program that you don't actually hear it. And also when you take it out of the actual context, you actually hear what's going on in it. The score itself actually got an Oscar at won the award. That Oscar award by Trent Reznor.
That Oscar
award. But the work itself is pretty much a Trent Reznor original. It's like I said, it's the first thing he's written on his own, outside of like the Nine Inch Nails thing. He'd done soundtracks before. He actually did the soundtrack for Natural Born Thrillers. Which one is it?
Killers.
Natural
The
Born
Woody
Killers.
Harrelson film.
Yeah, he actually did the soundtrack for that, but lots of it was just reworked versions of anything from the Downward Spiral. And so this film really is just the soundtrack for this is just something that Trent's taken a complete step away for. If you've heard any of his stuff from anything really from the Downward Spiral, anything to this period of time, it's all just this really harsh, heavy industrial music.
We're not talking about him on a downward spiral. Just
Well,
people that don't know.
Listen to that album. That album is the darkest thing you'll ever hear. Do you know the song "Hurt" is about him killing himself?
Well, he didn't kill himself. Clearly, he wrote the song.
It's about his
I know
story.
what
And
you
then
mean.
Johnny Cash died after singing it.
He was old. But you get what I mean. But no, anything really from Trent Reznor's output from there to The Fragile to With Teeth is this really dark ambient industrial tinged music. And then Trent starts trying to break out of that artistically with things that he released on the Ghost albums and anything after that. But you can never really truly do it because he always had this this pressure of being a Nine Inch Nails kind of thing. So this soundtrack, he really just took it himself. He took a break from Nine Inch Nails, the first break he'd taken in about 15 years, and just dedicated all his time to writing this soundtrack. And I think it works really well. There's so much going on in it. There's a lot of like just electronic in it. There's a lot of synth pop in it, which Ray knows I love.
Almost as much as K-pop.
I don't like K-pop, but there's a lot of electronica in it. There's a lot of just different elements. All right, there's a lot of just different elements into it. There's a lot of experimental and dark ambient noises in it as well, which you don't really expect to hear, a dark ambient kind of noise. But that coming from Trent Reznor's world, it's really fits in quite well with it. And yeah, The Social Network.
It's a good pick. I mean, the rule was we've listened to 2 tracks of each of the soundtracks just as a sort of baseline of what we think. And I mean, first of all, the Tetris remix sort of thing they did, that was awesome, but the second one won it for me. And like you said, I didn't realise the soundtrack. I enjoyed the film. I didn't realise what it was doing in terms of its audio, other than Jesse Eisenberg being a whiny little bitch, but that's Jesse Eisenberg. And yeah, I'm impressed. And it's one of those ones that I feel like I might actually, not buy, but listen to on Spotify possibly very, very soon.
It's a proper sound. I say it's a proper sound. It's a soundtrack in the way that there are no actual lyrics to it. It's all just done on keyboards and synth music, and not much guitar work really goes into it, except for when the ambient noises comes in. And it's just a
We're moving a prop cat.
It's just a really well worked piece of music that, again, it just sort of passes you by in the actual film, because the film, I think, is probably just I think the film's actually that good that you don't really pay attention to what's going on in the foreground because there's so much speech going on in it. But
you do have to wonder, though, whether subconsciously that soundtrack did kind of enhance the film without you even thinking about it. Because especially because of the lack of lyrics, it just kind of blends into the background and just really kind of suits the tone. And it's really good to see Trent Reznor doing that, because he was just so defined by that kind of his sound before then, and he's clearly a very talented songwriter. And just to be able to branch out like that and, completely nail it. So it's very good. I actually enjoyed it.
Used the word nail there.
Yeah, I know.
Deliberate, was it?
It was when I realised.
Take credit, you sleazy dog.
But from there, he's actually gone. He's basically been able to branch out. From there, he worked. He broke up Nine Inch Nails from there after working on this album, and he helped his wife write and produce an album called How to Destroy Angels, which again is it's still an industrial thing, but it's more in this kind of vein, dark ambient kind of.
It's not like a Robbie Williams remix.
Oh no, it's nothing like that. And really, and even his last album is more in this kind of vein than it is the darker, heavier industrial kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's really helped him as an artist, I think, progress to where you wanted it to be as well. So I think it did everyone a favour.
Well, thinking about it, he's probably paved the way for a lot of people, isn't he, in the way that he's done things, where it's like, if you let this musician go his own way, look what can happen. As you said, I didn't realise it won an Oscar.
Yeah, won an Oscar.
It's like that.
I don't know. It's a really hard one because Trent Reznor is a well-respected musician, in much the same way that like Jack White is a well-respected musician, but you wouldn't trust Zach White. Jack White? What's his name?
Jack White.
Jack White. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't. I don't think you'd trust Jack White in the same way you trust Trent Reznor to actually produce an entire album by himself, to write an album by himself.
Well, Jack White did a song for James Bond, but that was
which
probably
was, in my opinion, one of the best ones.
It was a good one.
Yeah. Songs or films? Because the film was
the song is good.
The song was cool. Yeah.
It was better than the Chris Cornell song, wasn't it?
I'm just because no one else to save you.
All of which trump Madonna, "Dying of the Day."
Oh God!
Which was like her trying to do like club almost.
Die. Another day.
Like super synth. It was horrible.
Don't even remember that one, to be honest.
It's during the torture scene, and that sums up the song perfectly.
It's with the Scorpions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't remember
it's
that.
It's terrible. And Paul McCartney did a Bond song.
Live and Let Die is decent, though.
Yeah.
It was a Wings song
was
first,
that him,
though.
Was it?
Yeah, Paul McCartney and Wings.
Pulp wrote a song for Tomorrow Never Dies, but it didn't get selected. True story. Fun fact.
Again with Pulp.
Believe it or not, do you know the "Take a Look Around" song by Limp Bizkit?
Yeah.
That was originally written for for Mission Impossible 2.
You can, literally a theme song.
And then they just went, Metallica are better.
And moving on swiftly to 21st century Spittree, man.
King Crimson himself.
Oh.
I am wearing red, after all.
It's not red, that's more of a burgundy.
Pink.
For the colourblind among us, it's pink.
So, yeah, I chose Highlander myself. A film which I love, and I've recently rewatched with the specific purpose of using for this show. Most of Highlander was already produced when the soundtrack was made, as is often the case. Queen, they watched the entire film, absolutely loved the film, and they then sort of decided to make... they originally just one, but it ended up being 8 songs. They made 8 songs for it. The 2 that I chose to play were Princes of the Universe and Who Wants to Live Forever. 2 songs that are used in very different ways. Princes of the Universe is very much an action one. Who Wants to Live Forever is there for these sort of emotional scenes with his lover in sort of Scotland, and also with the journalist in sort of more modern times then. But both really poignant. But like Brian May also got in on a couple of songs as well. I mean, It's a Kind of Magic was one of the ones there. But it's a soundtrack that defined the movie, and it's one of those things that's been a worry with the new reboot. Like, what are they going to do? Because it was defined by its soundtrack. I mean, as a film defined by a soundtrack, that's where it's huge. And the reboot can't really do the same thing again. But they weren't even the first choice. They originally wanted David Bowie.
That would have worked, I feel.
And then when they couldn't get David Bowie, they wanted Duran Duran.
That would not have worked.
I don't know. I reckon Duran Duran could have worked at that time.
That was Duran Duran who, again, they turned down the role. Queen took it up and they just went with it. Did some really cool stuff, in my opinion. But they defined the film, which was already, in my opinion, a good film. But the soundtrack made it what it was. And they are my choice. I mean, I was going to pick Tron Legacy, which is like a 2-hour circle jerk of Daft Punk, just throughout the whole thing.
It's one of those films though where the soundtrack is a lot better than the film. I didn't dislike the film, but
Which one are we about now?
Tron Legacy.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Highlander.
But to be honest, I'll probably say the same about Highlander. I don't have the nostalgia boner you do.
Nostalgia boner, yeah. That was my choice. Highlander. I think Queen and Highlander go together so well. And as we talked about earlier, it was Freddie Mercury before what happened in terms of his health.
It's
And
the height of his ability in a sense almost, or the career as well.
Absolutely. But I think it was what made the film almost eerie. It gave it an atmosphere which it didn't have originally, and the director couldn't have given that atmosphere no matter how good he was. But such a good soundtrack. I know I'm gushing about it, but
If only Freddie Mercury were a Highlander. No? No? Can Highlanders die from AIDS?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that happen yet, where like Duncan MacLeod is like diagnosed with HIV.
Maybe that could be in the reboot.
Duncan, your sword is dirty.
Do you reckon Sean Connery would be in the reboot?
No, he's retired from acting after League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, didn't
He
they?
might come back, won't he?
He won't come back. They wanted him fucking Skyfall, but he was going to be the old groundskeeper in Skyfall. But they couldn't. They didn't want to ask him because he'd retired.
Well, one of the weird facts about Highlander when they were filming was that Sean Connery, being notoriously difficult, to work with, he said that he could only do a week of filming, which was like really difficult. And he actually made a bet with the director whether or not they could do the film in 7 days, like do his parts, and they did. But like, the first 6 days were like his actual scenes, and the last day were just reactions. You see him they're like sad, happy, angry, like making him do the emotions on the screen, and then like adding them in. You can see where they're placed in the film, but it doesn't really matter. I think it's ridiculous.
Angry Scottish.
I
just
made
angry.
this film in 7 days, and on the 7th day I reacted.
But
in this film, I play an Egyptian.
Who's a
With
Spaniard.
just say
By way of Scotland.
Until I mentioned Highlander, you both thought he was a Spaniard. He's actually an Egyptian. You're absolutely right. Thank you for mentioning that.
He sounds so Scottish.
It is so one of the most confusing accent-based films ever, though. Like, they've all got the wrong accent. I get they're all well-travelled, but they've all got a very specific accent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, the Chris Lambert, he was given a coach to sort of make a nondescript foreign accent, but I want to do a shout out to Michael Cameron. He's the one who decided where the music went in the film and the ambient music between the songs. Like, he really fitted it in its place, and he deserves as much credit as Queen, in my opinion, because placed in the wrong scenes, those songs are awful. Like Prince of the Universe doing
Come in doing the love scene.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work.
Here we are. Hello.
It's just too much dominance there, but that's my choice. So Danny.
Okay, so
drive it home.
for mine, I picked Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which technically has a soundtrack and a score, so they're both actually separate things. But I'm going for the soundtrack.
Yeah, we are doing
point,
soundtracks.
Yeah. So I picked 2 songs. I picked the opening song of the film, which was pretty much defined it and sealed the deal for anyone that watched it. They knew from that opening scene whether they were going to absolutely adore it, and that was We Are Sex Bomb, which is just a ridiculous name for a song and a ridiculous name for a band, Sex Bomb. But it's just such a kind of thrashy, grungy garage rock that kind of defines that kind of age that I'm in now. That's why I kind of love it. It's kind of late teenage to I'm still a 20-something, so I can say that. Not quite reached that quarter of a
Sums up my
century yet.
teenage years that I'm living in 5 years later.
Retroactively. But yeah, and it's just kind of got that really kind of raw the kind of thing that you'd see. You'd go to a bar on a Friday or a Saturday night and you'd see that kind of band and you'd really enjoy them, but you're not like...
They'd be in the Parrot, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they'd be in the Parrot and you'd really enjoy them, but it just kind of typifies life at my age, I feel. That's why I loved it. And yeah, it really added to the kind of aesthetic of the film. So a lot of the movie is based around music. So you got Sex Bomb and other bands playing like original music in the film. It was written by Beck, who's one of my favourite musicians, so I do have a Beck hard on. Yeah, I love his music, and it's still a bit different for Beck because he used to be a busker, and I think that's based on what he drew. That's what he kind of drew his experience on for writing the music for the movie. And in the second song I picked Threshold, which is a battle of the bands between like a head-to-head battle of bands at the same time between Sex Bomb and the Katayanagi twins, so these Japanese electronic twins. Mm-hmm. And the guy who does the music for them is Cornelius, who has been described by musical reviewers as the Japanese Beck. So it's just like the perfect kind of full circle approach. Is Beck v Beck.
I was just seeing the Fifth Element, Cornelius.
When you said Cornelius, I was thinking of like Planet of the Apes Cornelius, just this big baboon. It's like...
But yeah, and it's got that same kind of aesthetic, but it kind of perfectly melds the kind of grungy rock sound with an electronic sound, but at the same time they're kind of clashing with each other. So it's like a really weird mix that kind of works, and again it really adds to the film. It's the complete opposite of The Social Network, where the music is very obvious in the film because it's such a massive part of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, they merged the visuals as well. I mean, you said thrash, and they were very aggressive. Like every strum was like sparks almost coming off it.
Yeah.
They played, and every musician had their own way of doing things, like the Twins, for example.
Yeah.
And that was awesome.
It's just, yeah, the aesthetic of the film just really kind of gels and is an extension of the music, and I feel like that's the most best utilised soundtrack that I enjoy. There's loads I enjoy, but yeah, I feel like it's the best utilised, and that's my thing. Okay, so I believe I'm going to give the visiting dignitary with his diplomatic immunity the first choice. Who do you pick?
Diplomatic immunity. Do you know what? Not to be biased, I decided very quickly on my soundtrack, and it was one because I didn't expect it, which was the bloody Social Network. Like, I didn't realise I enjoyed the music to it, and I didn't even know it was Trent Reznor until you mentioned it. Like that's insane how that changed the film, and it just gave it that level because it was just 20-somethings screwing each other over in this business way, but it gave it that new level because you really felt for Spider-Man. I forget his name.
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield's character, who's
he really likes lasagna.
like the way that you'd feel for him when he's getting screwed over. God damn you guys! But that's where my vote goes. I can't help it because I didn't expect it. I mean, I love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I know almost every scene there, and I enjoy the film. Same with Highlander. But Social Network I've seen once, and I loved it, but I haven't seen it since. And the soundtrack I didn't realise was as important as it is, and for that reason, that's what makes the soundtrack amazing. And I'm just saying it. By royal decree, I'm going for Social Network.
It's very understated, almost like a bass guitar.
As much again, I love the Scott Pilgrim one. I haven't really listened to it enough. I can't really remember anything that's on it.
Scott Pilgrim face.
Yeah, that was my visible shock.
But I might have listened to a lot more. But just any mention of Queen just gives me. I'm not going to say hard on. Any mention
out from blood loss.
Any mention of Queen, anything from like around about that era of Queen, always just makes me think like really nostalgically. And I didn't know that Queen actually wrote the soundtrack for that album and a lot of those songs, which are iconic Queen songs. So I'm gonna go for Highlander.
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 Okay.
So Danny Craine.
the decider.
It's always down to Danny.
Yeah, it's because I veto this shit till the end. So yeah, I really love Queen, but it wasn't my favourite era of Queen, so I probably will have to pass them up because as much as I adore them, and I'm not a massive Highlander fan, so I don't think that helps it for me. I will have to pass them up, and as much as I love the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack, that's something that's like, it's done. I must really love it. It's done to death for me, and I will actually pick The Social Network as well, simply because I knew it won an Oscar, but I didn't really think of it when it won that, and I didn't really think of the music during the film. But yeah, it kind of almost subverted me. So it really. Yeah, Steff playing it earlier, and I think of the film, I was like, oh yeah, that actually really works well in context to it. And just when you think it's like of Trent Reznor making it, it's such a kind of a weird choice when you first think of it, but it does work really well. So yeah, just simply because as much that surprised me more than anything, I will go for that.
Well done, Trent.
Well done, Steff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've stuck with us so far. Can you please hold on a little longer? Because we do have a very fun fact for the day by Danny Craine.
Okay, so I get this as my consolation prize for being a loser. I get to do a fun fact. No, so apparently, as of when I read this fun fact, in the last 12 months, there's been more photos taken than there has in the entire history of the world. That's insane.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it makes sense in terms of how you think of today's society with Snapchat and all that sort of thing and selfies, but at the same time it's scary. Because it's not even... You think there's maybe more photos, but less relevant photos.
Yeah, but even just... We've been in the digital age where selfies have been a thing for more than a year. I mean, I believe I quoted this article from 1902, but...
It's like really amazing futurist predicted it.
Yeah, but it is insane. And it's almost, I mean, because I feel a lot of them are just ridiculously ones, like narcissistic selfies, which aren't necessarily a bad thing. Outro.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining
Plugs.
us.
Butt plugs.
Plugs.
Well, thank you for joining us for that. Yeah, I'm going to go into plugs, for f***'s sake, mate. Jesus Christ, let me do my outro.
finger, mate.
You put your finger in your way.
Well, thank you for joining us for yet another exciting episode of Tables, Lads and Chairs. If you want to stay in touch with us, we have a few means of doing this.
Oh, I say you do it. I know, that's good.
Thank you. We have a Facebook group where we continuously post really weird stuff. We have a Twitter handle, which is podcast TLC with 2 T's together. Where you'll get an update when a new episode goes out, which is good to follow.
Is that because we're Welsh and it's TLC?
It's not that at all, although well done. We also have a SoundCloud account. That's where we actually update our podcast directly. If you want to follow us on there, by all means, you can. You can even comment on individual parts of the podcast if there's one thing you wanted to comment on, which is awesome. And we're on iTunes, but that's just not a big deal now because we're such a big podcast. Just saying. If you want to contact us directly, you can at the email address, which is ask@tablesladschairs.com. And you can also visit our website, tablesladschairs.com. So much plugging going on right then.
Yep, and in the next few weeks, we will have our own Snapchat.
We'll have a Snapchat, and we're also looking into some YouTube content.
Because you'll be content with it.
Not anything more than that.
It was acceptable.
Do you gain catharsis from watching 3 people embarrass themselves on camera? By all means, join us on the Tables, Lads, Chairs YouTube community. I've been one of your hosts, Ray Hewson, with no nickname, as always.
21st century
spit tray man. Well,
you sounded more Bowie when you said that.
21st century spit tray king.
So
goodbye, Ray.
Goodbye, Steff.
He's gone back to foreign lands.
Goodbye, Danny.
Goodbye. I'll be here for the rest of the night.
Goodbye, dear listener. Bye.
Bye, Rachel.
Love you.